All right, guys, we're back for another edition of the Buck Junkies Podcast. What's happening?
Shoot,
Nothing but heat.
Man, it is hot.
I thought we started this supposed to be fall again.
It's supposed, we try to usher it in, but it ain't working.
Yeah.
It's going to break a record today, probably.
It was
Heat index supposed to be 114.
when I got in the truck yesterday, mine said 119 in the parking lot.
Holy smokes!
It was hot.
It ain't gonna scare you off for dove hunting, is it?
No, that air conditioner works fine at the house.
You ain't going dove hunting.
Yeah, I ain't worried about a
You
bird.
ain't worried about a bird.
I think we're going to be shooting skeets.
Yeah, probably so. But we got a special guest today. We got Mr. Joe Wilson that's going to join us remotely for the first time. You think it's going to work, Jamie?
I don't know. It probably wouldn't if I was over the technicalities of it.
But we're going to bring Joe in here just as quick as he pops in. But until then, Mikey, we got anything going on that we need to talk about?
Now we're going to get back started up. I guess we'll start trying to run some contests once we start back hunting. Maybe some trail cam pick contest or something like that. So y'all be looking for that.
We need to come up with something for dove season.
Yeah.
Dove recipes.
Might do a dove recipe.
I've got a pretty sweet backpack I need to give away.
We do.
That I have to get.
Something in your office I can get in.
Yeah. Huh?
That's big freaking backpack.
It's a big backpack. We'll bring it in here next week.
That's
we'll
a
bring it in
U-Haul.
here. We'll bring it to the podcast next week or talk about it anyway. But
It's more of it outclasses a deer stand backpack. It's more like you can be gone for a week backpack.
It's not a snack bag. It's,
Oh, it could be. That'd be a pantry.
man, you could fill that thing up. You could live off it for a week.
Be a lot.
But yeah, we got that going on, and we'll be, we probably won't get into dove hunt stuff today, but hopefully we'll have something to talk about next week when we come back. But I see Joe is popping in, so without further ado, let's bring Joe in. Y'all ready?
Let's go.
So it looks like we have Joe in the green room here, guys. This is Joe. You're going to be our first guest, but first off, we want to welcome you to the Buck Junkies Podcast. Thank you for taking time out of your day to come over here and talk squirrels with us. And man, we're excited about this World Squirrel Championship.
Man, I can't be more excited to have you guys. Last year, I know that was your baptism into the Squirrel Cook-Off. And obviously you liked what you saw because you're coming back this year and y'all are bringing the Buck Junkies and the How to Barbecue Right crew with you. So we're excited.
Man, it's a big time, man. That was I'd heard of the World Squirrel Cook-Off before because I know, knowing you for some years and knowing Mark Lambert from our area, he would go over there every year and tell me about it. And so me and Mikey decided to travel over there last year, and you invited me to come judge it. Now, I didn't know anything about judging squirrel. That was my very first experience. But I'm going to tell you,
You
man,
remember my first rule to you, Malcolm, was I asked you if you were allergic to squirrel.
and it turns out I'm not. That's a good thing, right?
Once you passed that test, it was all downhill from there.
So tell everybody that don't have any idea what the World Squirrel Cook-Off is. Just tell us about it, how it got started. Give us a little background so folks knows what's going on over in Arkansas.
Have I ever told you this story, Malcolm? It's did I tell you about the big lie I told?
No, I don't have any clue.
So back in 2011, I was contacted by the Andrew Zimmern Bizarre Foods program. And they had asked if I could help them host the Ozark edition of Bizarre Foods. And I know sitting around the table with you guys that we've got some football fans listening to this show, college football. And we had just had a major tragedy in the Arkansas Razorback program. Our football coach, Bobby Petrino, had been in a motorcycle accident with a young woman he had hired to work on the football team and who he was cheating on his wife with. They got in this motorcycle accident. And so in all the papers across the land, there was all kinds of headlines. And one of the headlines said, "Arkansas fans eat crow." Well, this Bizarre Foods wanted me to do a whole program on us cooking and eating crow here in the Ozarks. And I told them there was no need to eat crow because poultry was 45 cents a pound. And they couldn't get it through their thick skulls that we just didn't go out, hunt crow, and cook them up. So they said, well, regardless, can you cook crow? And I said, I absolutely could cook crow. I've done it before. And they said, how does it taste? And I said, I was drinking when I cooked it and I was drinking when I ate it. So therefore, I can't give you a solid opinion. And they said, well, what about bear hunting? Can you do bear hunting? I said, I absolutely can, and we can cook some bear. And they went through this whole list of rabbits, crows, bears, and gig and suckerfish in the river. And their final question is do you cook squirrel? And I said, absolutely, we cook squirrel. We cook the World Champion Squirrel. And they said, how do you know? And I said, well, we throw the World Champion Squirrel Cook-Off. And they said, when is it? I said, when are you coming? And they gave me a date, and I said, just so happens that's exactly when we have the cook-off. Well, there hadn't been no cook-off. There just been a bunch of people bragging about how good they do everything. Y'all know how that is. And so I had 1 week to get this cook-off figured out. And I was able to get 24 teams from 7 states in a matter of a week. And we filmed the first ever squirrel cook-off in August of 2011. Well, I had no earthly idea how many people was going to watch this program, but I knew there was an opportunity to make some money. So I started saying I'd sell you a t-shirt for $20 with Squirrel Cook-Off on there. Come to find out, you can't ship a t-shirt to Australia for that kind of money. And then again, I didn't know that the majority of the people that watch Bizarre Foods wear a 4X and tend to order stuff at 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning. And so I kind of got out of the t-shirt business and made it to where you could only buy a Squirrel Cook-Off t-shirt day of event. So that's how it started, man. It started off of me telling a fib. And since then, we've had the opportunity to be on, I was the first guy to go squirrel hunting on CBS Sunday morning. The organization or the event got the front page of the Wall Street Journal. We didn't have to file bankruptcy or kill anybody or start a war or nothing. And so it's been a huge success in saying that we were able to take this little small animal, turn it into real big dishes, fancy dishes, and serve anybody who wants to come an amazing meal.
And it's really crazy that it's all around squirrel because I mean we take it for granted. We grew up usually if you're a hunter, that's one of the first things you remember hunting as a kid.
It's squirrel hunting,
is going squirrel hunting, and we cooked some of it, but it wasn't one of the big meats that I look forward to eating every year. I mean, squirrel's pretty good, but it doesn't stack up there with deer meat or duck or turkey or any of the other stuff to me. So how did y'all?
It just takes a lot longer to fill your freezer.
Absolutely. Yeah. So how many squirrels do you think will be dispatched for this World Squirrel Championship Cook-Off?
Well, most people have been grocery shopping for these squirrels for several months now, and I'd estimate that it's probably going to be close to 1,000 squirrels used.
That's a lot. That's a lot of tree rats there.
Man, that's a lot of ticks and chiggers for sure.
So in Arkansas, do y'all hunt squirrel year round, or are you going to do like we do, where it's just primarily in the winter?
No, so our season really is all but 2 months out of the year, and it's a real liberal bag limit. The idea is they've been trying to run out of squirrels for a long time in this country, and just have not been able to accomplish that. And so, like you said, when we grew up, we all started squirrel hunting. We started small game hunting. And, that's kind of dying off. Whenever a young man or a young girl can go out and sit inside that plastic box and be successful at hunting deer, that's not something that guys in our age group had the advantage of doing. It was big time to drag a deer to town. And now people get upset when they don't shoot a deer. Used to, you were you were absolutely blessed if you were to harvest a deer and put that thing in the back of your truck and drive it around town. It's just not like that anymore.
Well, Mikey, what did you think about this when we went? What was some of your experience at the Squirrel Cook-Off?
Well, I mean, I really didn't know what to expect, but I figured this was going to be a bunch of hillbillies and unorganized, and just really didn't know what to expect. And then we get up there, and I was like, man, there's all these little events going on between the pellet rifle shooting and all these cooks out there, and it looked like a barbecue contest we would go to, just a smaller version of it. I mean, people out there cooking everything from fried squirrel to stews to ramen noodles, and just everybody just doing a lot of different things. And, I kind of got hung up in that, trying to video some of those people and try to capture some of that, what they were doing, and not for them to tell me the secrets, but just see what they were doing with the squirrels. Cause I've eaten a lot of squirrels, but my squirrel, cookbook ain't very big. It's mainly just fried squirrels, dumplings, and a little gravy on some. But these guys and girls they were doing it to it. But I was really surprised that many people showed up to do that. I didn't know. Like I said, how many teams were out there last year, Joe? Probably 40.
I believe we had 38 teams last year. We cut it off at 40 because that's too much punishment for our judges. But I'll give it to you this way. I've kind of grown up like you guys in the cook-off world, and been to a lot of big barbecue comps and big steak cook-offs. And the one thing that I always said, that if we're going to throw an event, we want it to be judged fairly. There's no point in you spending a pile of money to show up at something and for me to have the weatherman and just a bunch of characters. We've got to have people that are bona fide and who know exactly what good food's supposed to taste like. And so that's the reason, Malcom, you were there. I mean, you know how to barbecue right. You dang sure know how to eat right. You know how to put mayonnaise on everything. And there's a short list of people in this world that I trust when it comes to judging squirrel fairly. And Malcolm Reed was right up there on the list.
Well, I appreciated that opportunity because I had no idea what we were in store for. And we probably need to go over some of the rules and to tell people, what it takes to cook these squirrels, because I was like Mikey. I was going in with the impression that you're going to have somebody's grandma's squirrel and dumpling recipe. You might have some squirrel and gravy, but right off the bat, I got served. It was like a Hawaiian style squirrel fried rice and a hollowed out pineapple that was all, chefed up. And this was like entry one. And I was like, what are we doing today? This is not what I was expecting. And then every single dish that I judged built on that, and they were all different. And it was really, really challenging picking out, which one was the best out of all these great entries. And these aren't just regular people out there cooking this stuff. I mean, these guys are pros.
Yeah, I kept running back showing, I was taking pictures of, the dishes on both tables or all three tables. And that's what I kept doing, running back to Malcolm. I tell him, man, look at this. I wish you could have tried this. You should have tried this, and there were so many different dishes hitting that table. And the way they had them decorated, it was just, man, it was like MasterChef stuff. It was unreal.
So your question was, how do we judge? Well, and what's the rules for the competition? Obviously, this isn't brisket, this isn't chili, it's not gumbo, and it's not a ribeye steak to where everybody is told to turn in the same thing. So just like you said, Malcolm, if there's 40 dishes, there's a good chance there's 40 different dishes going to be on that table. And so we had to start judging fairly, and judging fairly to us meant we had to judge everybody on their own merit. So if you had squirrel meatloaf served up at your table, my rules to you as a judge is base that meatloaf off of the best meatloaf you've ever had in your life. And how does it square up to that? That meatloaf ain't going against that crazy pineapple you just talked about. It's going against meatloaf. If someone does a squirrel and dumplings, well, that squirrel and dumplings is going to go off of your best memory of what the greatest squirrel and dumplings was. And how does that chalk up to that? So there's certain things that we all know about squirrel. One is it could be tougher than boot leather. So we're going to judge it on the tenderness, how you prepared that squirrel, how you broke it down, and how you made it edible to where it was tender. Of course, taste is the goal. You want this to taste as good as you could create it. Um, Taste and texture, those are things that we deal with in all cooking sports. So we also do it in squirrel. Your vision, right, of what you decided that you were going to cook, that's a big part of it. And then the side dish that goes along with it. Not only did Malcolm have to go through all the torture of eating all these entrees, he also had to do all the side dishes that paired well with that dish. So we made a rule that you get an extra 5 points if you put squirrel in your side dish. That led to all kinds of controversy. and so these teams have gotten smart. They'll take the bones of the squirrel and they'll make a bone broth and they'll add that liquid inside their dish. They'll do just unique things. But really what we found out is this squirrel's like the tofu of the woods. Whatever flavor you want to add to it, it'll accept that flavor. And so that's what gives us this diversity. There is a 100% odds that at some point Squirrel and Dumplings is going to win this deal. You just got to bring the best dang squirrel and dumplings you could imagine.
So there's no parameter on what dish you have to cook. It just has to contain squirrel for the side dish portion. Now, the main entree, primarily, it's mainly consistent of squirrel meat, right?
Yeah, so 80% of the meat used in your dish has to be squirrel. And that allowed us to put 20% in there for fat. Or you could put a secondary protein inside of that dish. But the thing was, is if someone wanted to make a squirrel sausage and they just used squirrel meat, it was going to be horrible. And so they had to allow for 20% of that to be fat. So we could get an 80-20 split, just like on decent hamburger meat. And so that if you wanted to make a squirrel sausage, you could easily grind up a mess of squirrels and throw a can of Spam inside that sucker and get you to where you needed to be to make a quality squirrel sausage.
I'm gonna take your word on that. Spam and squirrel. I'd try it.
It might work, man. You put enough blue plate over the top of that thing on a nice crisped up bun. Shoot.
So
We're living.
Let me get this right though, Joe. You don't provide the squirrels. Like it's up to each individual cook team to bring enough squirrels for their dish, right?
Yeah, so we're all hunters, at least the guys sitting around this table. But a lot of these people aren't hunters. And one of the things that I was hoping to influence was the fact that people that work real hard to go out and put meat on the table and some meat in the freezer, it's a lot of work. This whole idea of going to the grocery store and sorting through everything to find the perfect one, that's not necessarily what we have as hunters and fishermen. And so to show people once again, I'll put it to you this way. Every time I watch one of these Naked and Afraid or Lone Survivor or whatever they call these survivalist shows on TV, I think those people are doing what humans have done for a million years and what we forgot in the last 150. So everybody has the ability to go out and hunt or at least gather. And so all we're trying to do is to refresh people's memory that you can go out and you can harvest a deer and you could eat on that for a little while. You can shoot one of these hogs, you can eat that thing and you could eat on it for a while. You're going to shoot you a mess of squirrels and you could eat on them for a day. But there's plenty of stuff, whether it be in our rivers or seas, on our land, that we can go out and feed people healthy food. And I'd much rather eat wild game than I would one of these so-called grass-fed beefs. But there's there's a need for people to go out and see how much work it is because they'll respect it a little bit more.
Oh, I knew when we were on our way driving there last year, Joe, you had called us, and not only did you have squirrel, but you said you had, I don't forget how many pounds of iguana meat it was.
It was
and then you had a fish. It was one of those Asian carps.
Asian carps.
It barely fit in a 100-quart cooler. and then what else did we have? Rabbit?
Alligator, rabbit.
Yeah. So it's not just squirrel.
No, last year, there was guys who were cooking beaver. There was one guy who fed me a piece of bear meat pastrami that he made that was phenomenal. So all of this, it all leads to it. There's going to be people at this event that the first time they ever went out in the woods other than to jog or ride a bike was so they could participate in the World Champion Squirrel Cook-Off. And that's just cool to me. One thing about squirrel hunting is the reason why we're not flashy and got a whole bunch of TV shows on the weekend is there's really nothing I could market to you that's going to make you a better squirrel hunter. You can't go out and buy special scents. You could wear a pair of blue jeans and regular shirt. You could do everything like you were going to do if you were sitting in the house watching football, and grab your 22 or your shotgun and go out there and knock squirrels out of the trees if you want to. It's a low impact, low cost sport that people, they remember the good times they had with their uncles and their grandpa and their dad, but they kind of got away from it because they're just searching one big animal. And I say go out and shoot that one big animal and go out and shoot you a mess of squirrels. Remember what it was like to dove hunt, quail hunt, squirrel hunt, rabbit hunt. These are things that made us who we were. And for some reason, we left them behind.
Well, I know Jamie and I got to go on a good squirrel hunt.
Yeah, that's what I was sitting here thinking about.
And that was, you want to tell Joe a little bit about what we did. Now, this is how you hunt squirrels.
Yeah, we was hunting a buddy's hours club on the river, and I mean, yeah, we grew up squirrel hunting, but kind of like you said, just kind of got tired of it or burnt out on it or whatever. But these are all, they pretty much the main guys were older than us. But man, them guys are die hard on turkey hunting, but die hard on squirrel hunting. But they all got their own dogs. They got their own ways of doing it. And it's, man, we hunted 2 days, one day or 2 days, whatever. And man, we had a blast.
It's pretty much like safari hunting squirrels. You ride around with the dogs, and then you jump out, and hopefully them dogs didn't, treat within 100 yards. And you got a couple vine shakers, and you got kids spread out with shotguns. You got a couple guys with 22s, and it was a communal hunt more than it was just going out and trying to still hunt squirrels.
Yeah, it was one guy there. It was, what did he say? He had, I guess it was his dad. It was like 4 generations total, all the way down their kids. It was on that squirrel hunt, and it was, that's pretty cool.
Well, that was one thing that I didn't even know existed. I didn't know people hunted squirrels like that because Joe, the way I started was just you grab your shotgun, you follow behind your dad or your uncle or whoever's taking you hunting, and that's how we hunted. We'd stop, sit down, listen for some squirrels. We might pick off a few, but we didn't have dogs. We didn't have anything like that. It was just about being out in the woods.
You remember last year, Malcolm, you and I got to do a podcast after the event, and we sat there and there was a fella dressed up in old John Wayne style camouflage, and his name's Kevin Murphy.
He was barefoot.
barefoot, had his dog there, dressed up, had a pistol on its side for some ungodly no reason. And that's Kevin Murphy. And if you were to Google Kevin Murphy, you would see that the headline that would come up would say world's greatest small game hunter. And I asked Kevin, I said, how'd you come up with that title for yourself? And he says, they gave it to me. I said, thank God, because I didn't know if I could sit here and talk to you, any man who would name himself the world's greatest. But Kevin Murphy, he's the guy, and he tries to bring small game hunting back to the children and to the unknowing, and he's doing a real good job. He's been on Meat Eater several times, and Kevin will be back this year. He's going to help guide us through the World Champion Squirrel Cleaning Competition, because that should be a good lead in to what do I do after I kill this thing?
There you go. Go ahead.
And
Go ahead and talk about that, Joe.
well, one of the hardest part is pulling the pants off, and to figure out how to clean a squirrel and make it worth your while. That makes it fun again. That makes it table fare, because a big old red fox squirrel is not fun to clean. There's guys who can clean a deer faster than they could clean a fox squirrel. There's other guys who could pull the hide off of that, or should we say the biodegradable packaging can be pulled off of that squirrel in, under 2 minutes. So we're trying to showcase that. So this year, in conjunction with Case Knife Company, we're going to have the World Champion Squirrel Cleaning Competition again. And the guy that's been winning that deal consecutive year after year after year is a guy named Clifton Jackson. And Clifton Jackson is originally from Georgia. He's currently a small game biologist here in the state of Arkansas. He's got the most expensive squirrel rifle you could buy, called the Jackson Squirrel Rifle. And that's by Cooper Arms, is named after him. This dang old Clifton Jackson showed up last year with a Mike Tyson tattoo over his eye because he wasn't coming to play no games. And if any of your listeners want to show up on September 7th, if they've got the will, they can try to whoop old Clifton, and I'd be interested in watching.
I mean, how do you prep for that? Like, I mean, you're not like you're going to the gym and working out. I mean, how do you prep for being a faster squirrel skinner?
First, you shoot a lot of squirrels.
Yeah, I interviewed him and I asked him. I went up and interviewed him on the video or whatever. I don't know that ever dropped on our page or not, but I interviewed that guy and I said, "What does it take to be a world champion squirrel cleaner, or the fastest squirrel cleaner in the world?" And he said, "Well, first you got to kill them." He said, and then he said, "You don't just kill a few of them." He said, "I have killed thousands and tens of thousands of squirrels and cleaned tens of thousands of squirrels." He said, "It's all just repetitive stuff. I figured out an easy way to do it, and I'm just good at it." So he's he was quite a character. But that, like you was talking about that tattoo, boy, that was pretty cool. That old Mike Tyson tattoo on it. I thought it was real, and I was like, "Man, this guy is cocky. He just got him a tattoo." I was like, "There ain't no way that's real," and he pulled it off, Yeah. But he was a character, man.
Man, I was on a radio show with Clifton just last week, and he's coming, and hell's coming with him. He's ready. He's ready to win this thing.
What is the record time for cleaning a squirrel? Do you have any idea?
Man, it's right at a minute.
1 minute.
It's fast.
And so this competition, this ain't a squirrel that was shot that morning.
Mm-mm.
This is a squirrel that I've been hiding in my freezer for several months. And so it's even more difficult. One of the secrets that, our listeners could do is, it's a good idea to dunk that squirrel in a bucket of water or in the creek and get it just saturated wet. And if you get it saturated wet, whenever you put your knife in there and you start cutting, well, that hair is going to stick to the fur. It's not going to come off, and it's not going to get all over your meat. So it's one of the most hygienic ways, I would say, to clean a squirrel is saturate it in water. I've watched guys do this with deer before. They hose down the deer to get the hair all matted down, so that way you're not picking small pieces of hair off of your skint deer later. We don't have that advantage at the World Champion Squirrel Cook-Off. You've got a semi-frozen, rigor mortis, old, nasty squirrel, and you're trying to pull the skin off quick. I'm just surprised we've never had a lawsuit for a loss of a digit or something during this thing. We do have you sign a little bit of a waiver saying that if you come to the event with 10 fingers and leave with 9, that's on you. But they go to doing it. We've got that. Another sideshow that we run is the world's hottest squirrel eating competition. And that event, I don't know, Mikey, if you got any footage of that or if you got to witness it. That is torture, man. That's like if you wanted to get the secrets out of a terrorist, you'd serve them one of these squirrels, and they would beg for mercy and tell you what their next plan was, because this is like lava. And Mikey, you get to see it. I'm in the judging room.
It was there was two boys that had never done it. I think there was a couple of guys that may have done it in the past, and there were two boys that had done it. They had to have been friends or something. And anyways, I talked to them afterwards. You know, of course, their faces beat red. They're crying. They're both coughing. And I said, guys, how hot was that? And they was like, I'll never do that again. That was the hottest thing I've ever eaten my entire life. And I'm probably not going to recover from this for a solid week. Like, my guts are on fire.
So what's the rules on this, Joe? You just get one squirrel, or is it squirrel hindquarter, or?
Well, we used to do squirrel wings, and with squirrel wings would be your hindquarters, and they were fried up just like a chicken wing. And if you wanted to make squirrel wings, the proper way to do it would be to pressure cook them, get them somewhat tender, dry them off real good, and work them just like you would a regular chicken wing. And so you could cook those either in the oil or you could cook them on the grill. And they're great. I mean, they're phenomenal. But the squirrel wing competition turned into a whole squirrel. And so when we talk squirrel, we're talking there's front legs and neck. And then you got the saddle area that holds your back strap and the majority of the bones. And then we get back to the part that you're probably most familiar with, would be the hindquarters of the squirrel. It all looks kind of like that tattoo right there. You see that?
I got
So
you.
what I got is every cut of the squirrel holding a ribeye steak on my arm. And that's just show and tell in case I'm out in public.
That might beat the Mike Tyson tattoo. I don't know.
So we've now turned this thing into a whole squirrel, and these guys got to take as much meat off of this thing as possible. Now, we've got a gentleman that comes out of Kansas City, and one of his hobbies is growing peppers. And so he grows those nuclear ones, the reapers and all of that stuff that are just ridiculous. He purees that, adds a little bit of vinegar and salt to it, and I think it's toxic, to be honest with you. But in the quantity these people are eating, it's probably not going to kill them. And so that squirrel is pressure cooked and fried, and then literally ladled over it is this hot sauce. The general rule is we'll put one of these squirrel beers in front of you, and if you reach down to pop the lid on that beer, well, you've lost. And so it's last person standing, and it's a crowd favorite. It's a hoot to watch, and I wouldn't do it.
So it's not a speed thing. Who could eat the squirrel the fastest? It's who could take the heat.
Well, two of them finished it last year that I watched, but just barely. I mean, the one boy that did finish it, he all of them were in bad shape. Now, like Joe was talking about, this stuff is bad. It's really bad. And none of them were. I guarantee they left that day and just,
there wasn't a winner.
The rest of their day was.
Oh, you lost if you won. Yeah,
you lost by starting this one.
But the other boy, he did finish, but he finished it took him a while, and he finally finished. But everybody else dropped out. I mean, they were just dropping off like flies, man. About 3 bites
like
in, the first
Bobby
guy was
Bear
out.
song.
Yeah. Would you be down to enter that, Mark?
About the winner.
That's a negative for me.
You're not going to do it?
No.
Like Mark, he ordered us up a Hot Ones challenge, and we did it with some wings. And that's the hottest thing I ever ate in my life. I heard for a long time.
The next day I'll
never do
rough,
it again.
Malcolm.
It ain't worth it. There's nothing about it worth it.
I can't do it. I'm definitely out.
What's the prize, Joe, on the Hot Squirrel Eating Contest? Case of Mylanta?
A case of beer.
You get one case of beer. You're going to need it. All 24 of them. You need a 30-pack since we're over Arkansas.
It's this year we're actually going to give for all the events, for the cook-off, for the cleaning competition, for the eating competition, and for the squirrel calling competition. Each winner is going to receive a limited edition case pocket knife that's been laser etched with World Champion Squirrel Cook-Off on there. They're also going to receive some fishing poles from ACC crappie sticks, and they're going to receive some of the squirrel brawl. That's our limited edition beer that's only sold at the World Champion Squirrel Cook-Off. And so, yeah, I mean, you get some prizes, man, but ultimately, Malcom, how much does that prize matter whenever it comes to bragging rights?
If you can brag that you ate the hottest squirrel, that's pretty strong feather for the hat, I guess. I don't need that feather, Joe, but
I don't want it either, Malcom. There's other stuff I'm not sure.
You mentioned a few of the other things. There's stuff for kids to do. I know y'all had a shooting competition. Is that what it was?
Yeah, last year, Daisy and Crossman is based out of Northwest Arkansas. Most Red Ryder BB guns you've ever seen in your life come right down the road from where we have the cook-off. And so we had 1,400 kids last year shoot targets with Daisy BB guns and pellet guns, which is pretty cool. Because if you think about the struggles these days to convince the mom and the neighbors that we're going to let these kids run around with a firearm, it's a lot different these days. So that particular day, we showed mom and everybody around that this is just part of growing up here in America, and that's what us Americans do. And so I was pretty honored. 1,400 kids is a phenomenal number. You know, we estimated that last year there was between 6,000 and 8,000 people show up for a 1 day, basically an 8-hour event. And that's cool as well. So we've kind of decided we needed another sideshow. So this year we're going to do a squirrel calling competition. And I don't know what that means, so we could discuss that here if you like.
Yeah, I got to hear a little bit of that, Joe. I'm not sure I know how to call a squirrel.
So you never made one of them as a kid?
No, how do you make a squirrel call?
You just get the two tops off a glass Coke bottle. I guess, I mean, that's how we did it, and had a hole drilled in it, and it was taped together. And I don't remember if you sucked through it or blew through it, and that's supposed to be a squirrel, if I'm not mistaken.
I hadn't heard of that.
So you know, there's hand calls that have been sold. There's some real cool ones. And basically, you're not driving that squirrel to you. It's a notifier, right? So if you come in and make some ruckus on the squirrel call, that's the sound you hear when that fox squirrel spots you, whenever you're getting all irritated at him when you're walking quietly in the deer woods. So it's just a way for a fella to know where they're at. A few years ago, I had a company that had invented a little device, and they built it with the hopes of calling in squirrels, but all it did was call in deer. And so this is basically a rasp, and they had a little low striker for this rasp, and that striker to me looked like a piece of a bandsaw blade or something. And they would sit there and they could run that striker over the top of that rasp, and it sounded like a squirrel eating hickory nuts or eating acorns. And so what they found is that was a call for white-tailed deer. So as they're making that sound, that means that the coast is clear. There's no predators around here, and there's a bunch of acorns on the ground. And so unfortunately for them, they were squirrel hunting, but it brought in a mess of deer. So it was called the squirrel cutter is what this deal was called. And they started using it for their archery, you know, sneaking in there, being quiet and making this cutting noise. And the squirrels weren't really there, but the deer come in thinking they were. And they made some money off of the deal.
I'm going to have to look that up. I've never heard of a squirrel cutter. Have y'all?
I mean, no, I hadn't. I mean,
it makes sense. I mean,
you think about it. You hear them. I mean, you can hear them cutting in hickory nut trees and stuff. You know, you hear them doing that. You know, when you're out there hunting and stuff. So it does make sense.
Never thought about bringing deer though. But I have seen deer go on alarm. You get a squirrel to making a noise in a tree, they go to barking. Those deer stick their head up.
Yeah.
And they're gone a lot of times.
Yeah. So Joe,
it's calm them down.
Do you think the squirrel calling competition, is that just going to be, you don't know what kind of call you're supposed to do here? Or is it,
I think it's going to be a shit show and quite funny, to be honest.
Mikey, you might have to enter that one.
I might have to get in that if there ain't no rules, especially.
There ain't no rules.
I imagine there'll be somebody stand up there and just start hollering for squirrels. I imagine there'll be all kinds of devices and mechanisms used to call these squirrels. The only way you're going to win is going to be by crowd, applause and all of that. And I think it'll be funny. And so that leads me into this. I like to be a showman a little bit, have a good time, say stupid things, and get people enjoying life. So what we've added this year is a referee to all of our events. And this is going to be our Gene Simmons lookalike. And this gentleman is traveling about 5 hours. He's bringing an entourage of 6 people to get him all made up and stood up.
Full makeup.
And I looked at the weather, and it's only going to be about 80 degrees, which is good for him and good for us, because I don't think all that makeup's going to melt off of it. And if it is, it's going to melt off of about 1,000 women who are standing out there anyways. So we're bringing Gene Simmons lookalike. He's going to be our referee umpire. He's going to help kind of control the situation. And why wouldn't you have a guy that looks like he's ripped the head off of a bat or something, supporting squirrel cook-off?
We're driving 4 hours. Is it something we didn't know?
No, I mean, so tell everybody where the Squirrel Cook-Off is, because we've just been saying Arkansas, but it's in a pretty good place.
So, believe it or not, a couple of years ago, we were going to move this thing to Tennessee, to Murfreesboro, and it didn't work out. They decided we weren't good for the public there. And so the Arkansas Game and Fish Commissioner contacted me the same day. He didn't know I just got canceled, and said, what does it take to keep this thing in Arkansas? And I worked my salesmanship and said, well, we're going to have to negotiate and come up with a plan. And he said, what's the plan? I said, 3/4 of the work has to be handled by y'all. And he agreed upon it, and I was saved that day because I didn't have a home for this deal. So we moved it to an Arkansas Game and Fish facility in Springdale, Arkansas, and it's off of 40th Street. And what I could tell the listeners or the viewers is they need to follow this long stretch of automobiles, and it'll guide them right to it. We've rented 4 buses to shuttle people from our designated parking to the event. We worked real hard on parking, but it's in Springdale, Arkansas. You'll be able to find it. The venue itself is beautiful. It's got a lot of live wildlife inside the venue, from fish and mammals, and they're working on quail habitat at this facility. So they've got quail inside there laying eggs, and it's got an indoor shooting facility. That's where we hold the pellet rifle shooting event. Good plumbing. We've got toilets and got some air conditioner if you get a little too hot. So Springdale, Arkansas, September 7th. Wouldn't have it any other way.
Well, and just besides all the activities Joe's been talking about, there's a bunch of vendors that come. I can't remember, what was the air pellet rifle people that were there that had that 50 cal air rifle. Do you remember from last year, Joe?
Yeah. Yeah, they'll be back.
Are they coming back? Yeah, that's pretty slick if you've never seen one of those. But
they'll be back. We've got a gentleman coming from Pennsylvania bringing some firewood with him, and he's going to sit out there and carve wooden spoons and spatulas. I brought in a company that sells bird feeders, because that's one of the greatest places to hunt squirrels. And I thought that'd be funny. So we've got a company showing up that does wildlife feed and bird feeders. They're going to be there. We've got a bunch of organizations supporting children, and these are not necessarily all hunting organizations, but these are organizations that understand that all of us talking right now, we're going to get old one day, and we got to make sure that our youth is on the right path. And so I've asked several of those groups to show up and help steer our children in the right direction. And you mentioned Mark Lambert. Mark Lambert's coming back. He's got a couple 100 pounds of rabbit to cook. This ACC crappie rods, they've just come out with a new fish fry and some brand new fishing rods and fishing line. So they're going to support us, and we're going to cook about 300 pounds of crappie and catfish and serve that up to the public for free. There's a whole bunch of free in this event. It doesn't cost you anything to enter the event that day. It doesn't cost you anything to eat. It doesn't cost you anything to look around and admire how many unique individuals have shown up to this deal. And I think it'll be free as well for my Gene Simmons lookalike to sign anything you bring with his autograph that will say "Not Gene Simmons" on it.
That might be worth it right there, Joe. You can pick up a T-shirt. You're going to have T-shirts. I do know that.
We got some T-shirts. Townsend Spice and Supply is going to be there, and they'll have some seasonings for sale. How to Barbecue Right's going to be there. I know you guys will have some food that you're working on.
Mark's bringing the jambalaya pot.
Yeah.
We're going to cook up a bunch of jambalaya, so we're going to throw any squirrel in it, Mark.
We got some. We can get it. We'll throw it in there.
So, can people expect to get to try squirrel? I know at the barbecue events, you know, they tell you don't expect to try the barbecue.
Yeah,
how's that?
Yeah,
work?
So it's first come, first serve, and like I said, there's probably 1,000 squirrels going to be issued to the event, but you got to get there. You got to go up, talk to people. I ask all the teams to try to cook as much as they can to feed the public. I've been servicing some emails and some text messages. We've got people coming from Europe, just to come to the Squirrel Cook-Off. That's their only goal, is to get here and try this thing. So we've got a couple different people coming from England. We have some people coming from Sweden. People come from all over the world to join us at this event. So if you're within, 3 days drive, you better start coming.
We're definitely going to be there, Joe. We're looking forward to it. What times it get started?
So our team start cooking at 9 o'clock in the morning. This whole party's wrapped up by 5 o'clock in the afternoon. And I'm going to come right out and say, this guy that you're listening to, old Malcom, and Mikey and the whole group there, when they said they wanted to come back, first thing they said is, what could we do to make the event better? And I said, well, be at the event. And then it was, what kind of supplies do we need to bring? And so, Malcolm's tied in with Blue Plate, and Blue Plate's making a donation of some tartar sauce for the fish fry. Malcolm's donating some hot sauce to go on that fish. And it was just really whatever I needed. You guys were willing to support it. And I think that comes from the fact that y'all know that community is a big part of survival. And we got to help out everybody around us. And so you guys are big on that. We also have that Cooking with Cajun dude. Have y'all seen this guy?
I don't.
The cornbread.
I don't know if I have or not. Have y'all?
Oh, he's one of those big TikTokers. He's kind of a Cajun fella wearing overalls, cooking in a cook shack, and he ends every meal with I don't want to say what kind of cornbread, but kind of like an Eddie Murphy style cornbread. He's gonna be at the event. We've got one of the moonshiners from Discovery Channel gonna be there. We've got a fella named Bryce, who's a world champion MMA fighter, big time squirrel eater. He's showing up. I mean, there's all kinds of YouTube style people going to be there for y'all to meet as well.
It's not just squirrels. There's going to be a whole list of characters at the World Squirrel Cook-Off.
If I'm throwing an event, it ain't going to be what you think it's supposed to be.
Well, Joe, we can't wait. I know it's just a couple few weeks away here, but we are absolutely looking forward to coming over to Springdale and hanging out with y'all all day and having a big time.
Yeah, hey, can't thank you guys enough. I know on our Facebook page, there's a lot of people excited to see y'all and learn how to make jambalaya right, I guess.
I ain't gonna say it's gonna be right. It's just gonna be good.
Yeah, it's gonna be real good.
That's right, brother. You know that. You know, the rule of thumb on cooking is if you like it, it's good. And if other people like it, it's even better. So I think that's what we've set out to do. We've tried to make an event that's family friendly, live music playing throughout the day, a lot of laughter, a lot of fun stuff will come out of this. And, you know, the thing about Northwest Arkansas is I tell people, if you come here, just bring one pair of underwear. Because if you bring two, you probably want to stay. That's just the kind of place we live. And I'm just telling you, if you travel a long distance, just bring one pair of underwear. And after you decide you liked it here, just don't buy a house and raise our real estate anymore. We're about out of that.
There's nothing wrong with that. Well, Joe, if folks have questions about the World Squirrel Championship Cook-Off or anything else that's going on about the event, where can they find you?
Man, I'm a one-source pony here, boys. So I would go on Facebook and go to the World Champion Squirrel Cook-Off page, hit the message button, send me a message. Believe it or not, we still have 3 or 4 openings in this. So if you want to put together a team real quick, because this is on September 7th, holler at me. We'll fill you a spot. And if you're worried about maybe this isn't the right event for me, I would just say come try it and you'll like it.
Well, all right. Well, we can't wait for it. I know it's going to be a lot of fun. And Joe, we appreciate you taking time out of your week to stop in here and chat with us about it. And let's have a big time here in a couple of weeks.
All right, brother. I'll see you soon.
We'll see you.